start with, welcome to Mast Building 101 from the Back Bay Skippers from the New Hampshire Boat Museum. We do have everything outlined in our soling manual. It's available on our news link, so just go to that and you can download it, or let me know and I can send it to you. What we found, and the reason I like the slotted mast, is that it keeps your luff smooth. With the old method of using the cotter pins, you tend to get crinkles along your luff, and I found that using the slotted mast gives you a much smoother luff on your sail. So what we're basically doing is going from this to this. That's our end product and what we're trying to accomplish. The outside strips are pretty straightforward. They're just straight strips, 3/4 inch wide by 3/16. The inside strip is a wedge. We have to try to get the grain of the wood so it makes a V. And the center strip, the grain goes across. This will give you a lot more strength and keep your mast much straighter. It's not absolutely critical, but it certainly does help. When we're doing the slotted mast, what we do is 7/16 wide strip and then cut it. Set your table saw at 5 degrees, cut it one way, turn it around, and cut it the other way. And what we're going to do for a slotted mast, which we're working on today, is we're going to route a slot so that when we end up, we have a slot for the mast, and we use what's called slugs, or little pieces of dowel to fasten it to the sails. So we're going to, the ones I've done originally, I routed the whole length, but one of the guys suggested that we start by only routing what we need for the slot and leaving the other, so we don't have to put plugs in the ends. You want to make sure you mark which edge you're going to be routing. I put it on top so I can see it, because they're just the opposite. You want to maintain that wedge shape on your grain. So using our router, we have a 1/4 inch round bit. A 1/4 inch dowel and a piece of sandpaper, just to smooth out the groove. Now what I've done is, this is 3 inches that I left unrouted, and that's where the gooseneck goes, is right here, 3 inches from the bottom of the mast. On the other end, the mast crane goes here. So I've left a spot so that you have plenty of material for the mast crane. For the glue-up process, we use either a U-shaped box or like this is an extrusion from, I think, a printing machine. And I always line it with wax paper just so it doesn't screw up your box, your glue-up box. So you run a bead along the places that need to be glued, which is only the flat part, not the groove. What I've been using for putting the mast together is Type-On 3, which is a waterproof, really good glue to use. You can use epoxy, but the Type-On dries a little quicker, so the process goes easier. So you're going to glue that, spread out your glue, put your wedge piece in, and I usually run them a little bit long and then cut them off when I need to. Glue that, more glue on your flat spots, both top and bottom. Okay, then you put your other piece on, put it into your box, and the best thing to use is wedges. This box has a rounded edge, so we did the same with the blocks. So I usually start by putting the wedges in the center, like that, and the edge, the end. I guess I don't need that one. If you make your box wide enough, you could do 2 at a time, but with the wedged mast, you have to use a wedge for your filler piece. So just wedge them in good and tight. And you go right down the line, filling them all in. And to tighten them, I use just a pair of pipe clamps and just give it a little squeeze to make it good and tight. The other thing I do is take some of the scraps that you used on your wedge and make sure that your gap stays open, because sometimes it'll collapse a little bit, so I use some wedge pieces just to hold it open. After your glue sets, you take it out of the box and you get this kind of a setup. What I'm doing is marking the opening to put the sail slugs in. This has to be solid because you have your gooseneck and your Vang attachment at the bottom, so this has to be solid with the slot. So this is 2 inches long, 3 inches up, 2 inches long, and it goes down like 1/4 of an inch. Then we're going to make the slot either an X-Acto saw or whatever fine saw you have. You can use a chisel or a knife to finish off your groove. And I like to mark the bottom of the groove with your knife, just so you don't go too deep. And you can just sand that out to make it smooth and look better. Okay, then you take a little fold of sandpaper and sand out your slot so the edges is rounded over just a little bit. You don't need a fine grit for this, just you're trying to just get a little roundness to the leading edge. The last step you need to do is have it so you can get a dowel in your sandpaper and smooth it out so your slug will go through. And test your slug, which is nothing more than sail tape and a little piece of dowel, and make sure that it'll go up through the slot smoothly all the way up and down. Which actually, that's not too bad. Okay, that takes care of that step. It comes out after gluing and getting your slot squared away. It comes out pretty rough, so you want to smooth it out and get all the corners rounded over. You can do it with a plane. I prefer the belt sander, and I'll show you that process now. Just keep working on it. This is needs to be a little coarser sandpaper, and it'll go a little quicker.
And what grit is that?
This I think is a 60, and probably yeah, the 60 works the best. I think this may be an 80, and you need to go to a little coarser grit. And then just keep working on it and working your way down. Flip it over and do the other side and smooth out your mast. What I did after I rough sanded it, I went with 120 grit, 220 grit, and 320 to smooth out your mast. And then I just use polyurethane. You can do a marine varnish, paint, whatever you prefer. But I just use regular polyurethane. It's waterproof and holds up reasonably well. Which we use a brass strapping around the bottom, and it keeps your mast from splitting.
On Rigging Detail D page of the manual, talk about a Vang band. So I've got a piece of brass here. It's 0.32 by 1/4 inch. It's 3 inches long, and I've made a mark in the center because what we're going to do is form it around the base of the mast so it looks like this. So what I've done is I just laid my brass on there. I've drawn a line because I want to create just a very slight tenon. I want to take off just a little bit of material here on the mast so that this piece will just fit right in there smoothly. Then we'll CA that, and that'll secure it to the base of the mast. To make that tenon, I'm using a pretty fine rasp. I'm using the flat side because I just want to remove just a little bit of that material. I want to get it started right on the line and draw it across. Now let's form this band around the base of the mast. To do that, I'll use some a rag to protect my mast. I'll put it in the vise. I've got my halfway point right here, that my 3-inch piece. Remember, this surface is the leading edge of the mast. The bow is that way. The stern is back down here. So we're going to place that on there. I'm just going to hold my finger on it, start bending it around. You know, it's brass. It's pretty easy to work with. I'm going to put my thumb on there, I think, and just hold it like that. Bend it around. You can see I've got it bend started. I'm going to pinch it as much as I can with my fingers and grab a pair of square-jawed pliers. You can see it makes a nice little bend. So we'll crimp together like that. This will be the aft side of the mast, and when we get soldered, we'll put a couple of holes in here for the boom vang and the downhaul and the mainsail. I'm just going to use this torch, heat the metal up. Should go pretty quickly. Probably need a torch. I don't know that a soldering iron would transfer enough heat into that. That's a lot of metal to heat up. Let's see where we are. There we go. So there's the Vang band. I put in 2 3 30-second holes. This will be for your downhaul from the mainsail. This will be for your boom vang. Took a little bit of 600 paper, cleaned it up a little bit, got the sharp edges off. I also like to take a little riffler file and run it around in there just to smooth off the interior of the hole right there. Depending on what you're using for rigging, whether it's wire or Dacron or fishing line, Spectra, whatever, that little sharp edge left by drilling can cut through your line. So it's good to, like I say, just riffle that out, make that a little bit smoother. So the line method is listed as an alternative way of reinforcing the base of the mast. Basically, it's wrap a whole bunch of line around that, put CA glue all over it, and you're done. I'm using 80-pound Spectra fishing line, and I put a loop on here. You can see I left the tail of it sticking out from the base. I'm going to hold that down with my finger, and I'm just going to start making wraps. And the first couple of ones are the diciest because it's slick, and I'm holding pretty good tension on this. Take the free end, pass it through my loop. If I can find it. There we go. Just pull that snug. That. I'm going to hold that and wrap this around so I can pull. I'm just going to pull that loop underneath my wraps. It's basic Boy Scout 101 here. And use my cutters for my fishing line. It's about the only way to cut Spectra line smoothly. And then you just coat this in CA glue. One thing I didn't show that needs to be in here is you'll have using this method, you'll have a little brass tang coming out of here that needs to go on first. That will provide your downhaul and your attachment for your boom vang.
The mast jack is glued into the base of the mast. The silver T-nut is glued with CA, being careful to not foul the threads. The handle, which is the black servo arm, is secured to the cap screw with a nut. The head of the cap screw will then seat in the mast step on deck. Turning the screw handle will quickly adjust the tension on the stays.